But let's start in the courts, and I can tell you that Ngizwe Mchunu, a former Ukhozi FM presenter, will remain in custody for another week. He is one of the suspects believed to have incited last week's violence. Mchunu appeared in the Randburg Magistrates Court earlier, and eNCA's Govan Whittles has been following that story and joins me now for an update on that story. I can see Govan getting ready for this conversation. Govan, from the get-go, the National Prosecuting Authority is opposing bail, this in a case that is a Schedule 1 offence. Tell us more. Why are they opposing bail?
It might seem abnormal to Ngizwe, but the reason involves a private jet and a chartered flight from Gauteng to KwaZulu-Natal. That's what the NPA alleges Ngizwe Mchunu did right after he found out the police were looking for him, and it's on that basis that they believe he's a flight risk, even though he did hand himself over. And they've gone a bit further, saying that it might be a Schedule 1 offence now, but once they get to the bail application, it might be escalated to a Schedule 4 offence or even higher, because they are still collecting more information, and they do believe that they'll be able to sketch an in-context picture of the series of events that Ngizwe Mchunu was involved in that subsequently led to unrest in South Africa. So that's why they'll be opposing bail in 7 days, and it looks like him being a flight risk is at the center of that.
He allegedly made utterances during a press conference that he held in Bryanston, which is within the jurisdiction of the Randburg Magistrate Court, where these utterances amount to incitement to commit public violence. And we will be opposing bail because when he heard that he is wanted by law enforcement, he allegedly left Joburg through a private jet. And when pressure abounded for him to be arrested, he handed himself over to the police. So we'll be arguing that he's a flight risk, and we're arguing that the incidents or the commission of all these offences induced a sense of outrage within the community. And we know the ripple effects of what happened throughout the country.
Govan, will get to the family's sentiment, Ngizwe Mchunu's family's sentiment about him remaining in custody in a moment, but I want to park that issue for a moment, just for a recap. For someone just walking in, not sure, not certain, what is it exactly that is being alleged that this former Ukhozi FM DJ is alleged to have done?
Right, so this former Ukhozi FM DJ is accused of inciting public violence, and it stems from a number of social media posts that he made. He records himself giving his self-styled address to the nation, and he's got somewhat of a following in KZN, and in his own addresses to the nation, he made a number of remarks which were picked up by law enforcement agencies. Outside KwaMai, he gave an ultimatum of his own to the president, saying that the former president Jacob Zuma should be released or all hell would break loose. And the reason why he's in court, according to the NPA, is that at the press briefing in Bryanston, which is in this area, he further made remarks inciting violence in isiZulu, and the NPA saying that they brought in a translator, and the matter really centers around his remarks on should we do nothing while the former president remains in jail. That'll probably be contested once he's here for the bail application, but it is on that basis that they believe he incited violence through those social media posts, self-styled addresses to the nation, and that media conference.
Yeah, I must tell you, Govan, I have watched some of those self-styled addresses to the nation, and just saw the mixed reactions and the mix of participants that follow Ngizwe Mchunu, some genuinely following him and supporting him and agreeing with the sentiments he's sharing, but you'll also find therein a lot of people who are actually on there just to laugh and have fun and actually mock him. And people like to share where they are watching him from, and a lot of the times they'll be making up really places where they allege that they are watching from. So people will say, I'm watching you from Honolulu, and someone else will say, I'm watching you from Tanzania. We love you here in Tanzania. So nevertheless, that's just an aside, me sharing that I've seen some of those addresses that are likely now to be at the center of the allegations against Ngizwe Mchunu. So he is to remain in custody pending the hearing of his formal bail applications, at which stage we are likely to hear a bit more detail of the state's case against him and what he is likely to say in response to that case. But him remaining in custody, it seems to irk his family. What have they said about him being remanded in custody?
Yeah, they're really not happy with him being remanded in custody. His advocate today in court staged what they said was a vehement opposition to the postponement of this matter for 7 days, and went a bit further, saying that they don't believe their client is that popular. They believe the state has made him more popular now with this arrest. But in terms of his family, Ngizwe, an interesting appearance outside court by Ngizwe Mchunu. You would remember him as the Fees Must Fall activist that served time for taking part in the Fees Must Fall struggle in KZN, also associated with the EFF. He's been appointed the spokesperson for the Mchunu family. They're not happy that he's being remanded in custody. They've pointed to his chest problems previously as a matter of concern for them, but they do believe that this is a political trial. Let's have a look at what Ngizwe Mchunu had to say.
The family, of course, it is very dumbfounded, because those who were inside the court, I'm sure they were able to see that this was a Schedule 1 offense. And under normal circumstances or under ordinary situation, when it is Schedule 1 offense, bail becomes something which becomes automatic. But today, we're not able to see that. Instead, the case was postponed for the 28th. So on behalf of the family, as I've been chosen by the family to come and declare that we are very dumbfounded about how the court has dealt with the matter. And if the court will continue to deal with this matter, we're very worried whether justice is going to be served.
So, Govan Whittles, there raises issues around this being a Schedule 1 offence and the question of bail being opposed, likely to be opposed by the NPA, saying that this is out of the ordinary course of events. I guess at a certain level, Govan, it begs the question, why is this a Schedule 1 offence? Why is he facing a Schedule 1 offence, which is incitement to commit public violence at this stage, when, from the words of the President, we've heard him say that, they believe this was an attempt at insurrection. Of course, there's been contradiction by the Minister of Defence, who has now sought to walk back some of those comments. But if we were dealing with organized, orchestrated and well-planned and known instigators, and he's supposedly one of the 12, I suppose there's going to be a debate there about this, him appearing on a Schedule 1 offence when these were crimes against the state. I'm wondering to what extent you've been able to hear from the NPA about some of these issues, albeit at an early stage before we get to the formal bail application.
Well, it's because they're not able to bring any charges beyond incitement to cause public violence at this point. The state has been talking big about the fact that they will likely bring further charges, but as yet they have nothing on the table. And in the interview with the national spokesperson for the NPA, they're also not keen on entering the insurrection theory talk. Instead, they're processing this as an ordinary contravention of the law and the first appearance. And while we have heard from the president saying that there may be extra special or special judicial processes initiated to process those that have been arrested for the unrest, we haven't seen that just yet. It's been stock standard approach from the NPA in their processing of him, and they've made it clear that the reason why it's Schedule 1 is because that's the charge that they're confident of right now, the incitement to cause public violence. And that's the case for Bruce Nimmerhout, who appeared in Roodepoort as well, although he's been accused of also instigating this. It's also a Schedule 1 offence, and the charge is also incitement to cause public violence. As yet, we haven't seen the state bring anyone to court on more substantive charges that would speak to their allegation that a coordinated effort to sabotage our economy and stage an insurrection took place over the last 7 days. The NPA is certainly not touching that at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, Govan. As we leave it, let me just remark that those will be key conversations going forward, because, in terms of the criminal law, certainly as far as I could see, the very serious charges that these people are likely to face if we go with the theory of insurrection, well, those charges are not likely to be insurrection. And I stand to be corrected, of course, I'm no expert in these matters, but it would seem to me that there will be two charges, two crimes against the state that are likely, paths that are likely to be followed. It would either be high treason, or sedition. One of the two. I did have a look at the criminal law books that I could lay my hands on. And therefore, once the NPA crosses that bridge, they'll be alleging something far more serious in this particular context. Govan Whittles, thank you for your reporting there. That's Govan Whittles outside the Randburg Magistrates Court here in Johannesburg following the appearance of Ngizwe Mchunu. As I say, I stand to be corrected. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But from what I could read, sedition seems to be one of the charges, one of the likely crimes against the state if we are alleging that there was an attempt at insurrection and these were the 12 instigators, sedition or treason. As was the case in the Buramach trial, that was the issue of treason.